G'day, let's talk F1 traditions. I've found plenty of them and I'm about to share them with you. First up, let's talk the winner's dinner in Monaco. What is that, you ask? Well, if you happen to win the Monaco Grand Prix, and that's probably unlikely because you're obviously not an F1 driver, but the winner of the Monaco Grand Prix is invited to have dinner with the Prince of Monaco on Sunday night. And it's considered impolite not to accept the offer. Obviously, you can bring a +1 or maybe even +2 or 3, who knows. But yes, you will dine with Albert II, the Prince of Monaco. I'm not sure where it takes place, but it is a slap-up dinner. Of course, some drivers in the past have been more excited perhaps about going out and partying with their friends, but they've had to obviously accept this dinner because it's impolite not to accept, and then probably they head out afterwards or they go straight home to bed because most of the drivers live in Monaco. And I've got a video coming up about that very shortly. Another Monaco tradition used to be that the F1 cars did not race on track on the Friday. At most races, cars are on track Friday, Saturday and Sunday, but not in Monaco. For many years, it was Thursday, Saturday and Sunday, and Friday was kept as a non-track day for religious purposes. Well, that all went out the door in 2022, and now Monaco falls into line with the rest of the calendar. Another time-honoured tradition is the transferring of crew members who move from one team to the other, particularly at the end of the season. I've mentioned this a couple of times before, but for those of you new to the channel, this is the deal. When you switch teams, often your old team will deliver you to the new team in perhaps not the best condition. It's just a bit of fun. And it's not just for crew, sometimes drivers get involved, perhaps not being treated like this, but sometimes they're thrown in the Abu Dhabi Marina after the last race. If you're in the paddock on that last night of the year, keep a lookout for that tradition. Oh, and if you have any quirky traditions that you observe, perhaps when watching a race, I'm very keen to hear those traditions in the comments below. Let's get on to one of the greatest traditions in F1, and that is the spraying of champagne on the podium. That dates back to 1950, when Juan Manuel Fangio won the French Grand Prix at a track just a handful of miles from Rennes. Apologies for my French pronunciation. And post-race, Fangio was awarded a bottle of Moet & Chandon, one of the most famous producers in the world. Let's go back to the mid-80s because the winner of F1 races back then celebrated the victory on track by wearing a large laurel wreath. That was a tradition for many, many years. Now it's been replaced obviously by the champagne. But in Japan, 2024, race sponsor Lenovo revived the tradition of the wreath with this trophy. This tradition is solely Japanese. It's when the fans stay after the race sitting in their same grandstand seats to watch the replay. The first time I saw it, I was gobsmacked. I went out to pit lane to do something well after the race had finished, and there was still most of the people in the stands enjoying the race replay. And perhaps as an aside, I'm quite amazed with Japan, with the fans in pit lane when they have a pit walk. This is all the protection that the security people put up. If you did that in Italy, that would be just bombarded, overrun. But the Japanese understand the rules and they obey them. Another tradition is the reserving of the number 1 for the reigning World Drivers' Champion. Now, it's not mandatory that once you win that title, you change to number 1 for the next year. In fact, Lewis Hamilton didn't. He kept his number 44. Nico Rosberg didn't because he promptly retired after he won his World Championship. Still on the subject of car numbers, the number 13 was banned for 36 years until 2014 when Pastor Maldonado decided to tempt fate. And did it do him any harm? Well, let's say that the results were less than encouraging. Doughnuts on track, something that most F1 fans just lap up. But Sebastian Vettel got pinged for doing them more than a decade ago because he stopped on track. FIA rules state that you must return to parc fermé with your car afterwards. You can't just leave it on track. And the other thing is that doing donuts puts a lot of stress on cars, and with a certain number of gearboxes and engines per season, no team wants to run out of those. So it's very rare that you would see drivers doing donuts on track during the season. Do you remember at Mick Schumacher's last race in, where was it, Abu Dhabi? He defied team orders and did donuts of his own accord. Is it legal though? Well, 2014 regulations state that a winning driver can perform an act of celebration before reaching parc fermé, provided that the act is performed safely and doesn't endanger other drivers or any officials. It must also not call into question the legality of his car, and it must not delay the podium ceremony. The track invasion at Monza is another time-honoured tradition that we would be sad to lose, I think. It is phenomenal to see tens of thousands of fans flood the track, and in particular, these magnificent flags. This is all very well arranged, and the guys with those flags take up their position 5 to 10 laps before the end of the race, and they get special treatment and are allowed onto the track to make sure that those banners are prominent and seen by the world. Now, is this a tradition or more of a superstition? It's Lando Norris. When he enters the garage from the paddock, he will almost always touch one of these bars as he goes into the garage. I think it's more of a superstition or just something to do as he makes his way to the car. And he's not the only driver to perhaps carry out a thing like this, a superstition, if you will. Sebastian Vettel always inserted an image of St. Christopher, who is the patron saint of motorists, in his racing shoes and always got into the car from the left, the same side as Michael Schumacher. Sergio Perez, when he raced, would have a picture of the Pope inside his car. Now, he met the Pope and I gather thought it couldn't do him any harm having the man's picture in the cockpit with him. Fernando Alonso says that he avoids certain people on race days that he thinks will bring him bad luck. Even if he saw them in the paddock or, say, on the grid and they wanted to shake his hand, he'd avoid that. And if he did shake their hands, he would then disinfect them quickly with some disinfectant from his trainer. Here's a superstition from a past driver, and David Coulthard. He always wore blue underpants given to him by his aunt until they were cut off following an accident. And Jacques Villeneuve, well, he only used race suits that were at least one size larger than normal. Most guys these days would not do that, although I did see Valtteri Bottas and Zhou Guanyu last year in some race suits that were well large, but that wasn't on purpose. That was just a cock-up in the manufacturing. RedBull has their own traditions, and one involves the swimming pool at the energy station in Monaco. If a RedBull driver wins a race in Monaco, typically they jump in the pool. Daniel Ricciardo did it, Sergio Perez did it, many have done it. But going back a couple of years ago, when there was some water restrictions, that pool was filled with plastic balls. Another tradition, or is it more a marketing stunt, is drivers wearing a watch after the race. This is because sponsors pay a lot of money and they want to see their watches on winning drivers on the podium. So when I'm down in Parc Ferme as the cars come back, often I have drivers' trainers over my shoulder handing a package which contains a watch and a cap and perhaps something else to Linda from the FIA, who takes it over to the particular box of the top three, and that driver would then put that watch on, ready for him to be captured on video and in photos for the whole world to see. One tradition that we have now lost in Formula One, some of you aren't that worried about it, a lot of you are disappointed that we have lost grid girls. When Liberty came into power, they decided to do away with the time-honoured tradition of women standing on the track holding the drivers' numbers in interesting outfits. That disappointed a lot of models who loved the gig. It disappointed a good many fans as well, but from F1's point of view, they wanted to just make sure that they didn't offend anyone. And now we have a tradition of grid kids. And who could argue with that? Here's another tradition that I think has gone by the wayside with Daniel Ricciardo leaving Formula One. The tradition of the shoey. He was pretty much the only driver to do the shoey, but it was met with great excitement, especially from his Australian fans. And look, with Jack Doohan entering the competition this year, could he pick that up and renew the tradition? Well, for a start, he'd have to get on the podium on the top step to win. And secondly, he'd have to think it was a good idea. I'll ask him when I see him at testing. Lando Norris's bottle smash is another tradition, for him anyway. He was doing it well before he entered Formula One, and it is a fair sight to see when he smashes that bottle down on the podium. I think we're going to be seeing a few of those this year. Another tradition that I've observed in my short time in the sport is the laying of flowers and wreaths at two spots throughout the year. Spa at the top of Raidillon to honour Antoine Hubert, and a number of drivers do that, and at Suzuka for Jules Bianchi. Lewis Hamilton started his own tradition in 2018. He was the first driver to regularly wear in casual gear to the track instead of team kit. Today, a good number of the drivers wear casual gear in, sometimes from a sponsor, sometimes just from their own wardrobe. But it's only Lewis Hamilton that wears fashionable gear every single day of a 4-day event. And my final tradition is, an interesting one. I don't even know if I should mention this, but I'll go ahead. I'll just treat it delicately. And really, it was only a tradition for 1 year in Hungary, where authorities set up, how do I term this? A little village with 20 huts just outside the exit of the track, where women of the night would set up booths and entertain punters as they left. I don't think you could get away with that these days. Well, there you go, some F1 traditions and some superstitions to keep you interested. Now, if you haven't yet subscribed, a favour, could you please do so now? Thank you to these subscribers for having done that already. And at the very least, I invite you to like this video. And if you'd like to check out all my other content on social media, along with get some great merchandise, head along here, in particular kimellman.com, to the shop. You'll be richly rewarded. Thanks for watching and stay passionate. Oh, and what's that? Turn that off, Ty? Yeah, I've got to go and do it in a minute.